Welcome in another edition of Chatterbox Reds, joined by Nick Kirby. I'm Craig Sandlin. Welcome in, everybody. Midway through November, GM meetings underway in Vegas, but across the Midwest, weather's getting a little chilly. Nick, how we doing up in Cleveland on this Thursday morning?
Doing good. I remember I work from home and watch kids, so I don't get out a whole lot. So it's kind of wild. I'll be like, "Hey, what's the weather like at 8 o'clock?" And I haven't been outside. So I sometimes I opened it to get the kids off the bus. That's sometimes the extent of it. So I think it's cold.
Well, I can speak from experience. The last couple of days here in Memphis, at least, it got pretty chilly, down in like the high 20s. Made me feel like it was wintertime, and I'm not really ready for wintertime, Nick. I haven't done any of my Christmas shopping yet, and I'm just not ready for that to happen. So we'll put the pause button on that. But for people that are maybe starting to think ahead for the holidays, Nick, got a great idea for them.
Yeah, I'm always having a hard time finding gifts, especially for people like my dad, my brother. Dudes giving dudes gifts. It's definitely not something that I have a strength with. But we have it for you. Holiday magic made easy with Omaha Steaks. If you place orders, this is great for procrastinators like me. If you place orders by 6 p.m. Eastern, they ship the same day. And right now, during the Sizzle All the Way sale, you can get 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $35 off with promo code Chatterbox at checkout. The steaks are obviously incredible. I really love the gourmet hot dogs. The apple tartlets is the best dessert for this holiday season. And I recently ordered the festive gift plus free burgers package. I thought that was a good deal. And if you've listened to this long enough, you know Nick Kirby loves a good deal. So save big on gourmet gifts and more holiday favorites with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their Sizzle All the Way sale. And for an extra $35 off, use promo code Chatterbox at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. That's omahasteaks.com, code Chatterbox. And again, that is 50% off and then an additional $35 off on top of that. Be sure to check out our friends at omahasteaks.com and use the promo code Chatterbox. And if you don't know how to spell that, well, it's in something that you're watching or listening to right now.
And we can both speak from experience. You mentioned the free burgers package, and we can both speak from experience that those burgers are extra juicy and delicious. So definitely recommend them. Look, Nick, speaking of grilling, the hot stove season is upon us. GM meetings underway in Las Vegas. Reds made what I'm going to call an intriguing move at this point, but probably one that a lot of people didn't see coming.
Yeah, the Reds pick up catcher Ben Rortvedt from the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's played 227 career games with the Twins, Yankees, Rays, and Dodgers. Left-handed batter, 190 hitter with a 549 career OPS. So not much of a hitter. Hit just a $152 with a 445 OPS in 44 games in 2025 with the Rays and then the Dodgers. He was actually traded to the Dodgers at the trade deadline in a deal with former Reds prospect Adam Serwinowski. The Rays flipped him after the Reds acquired Zach Littell. So a little bit of intriguement there. Viewed as a defensive first catcher who excels at pitch framing and game calling. He joins Tyler Stephenson, Jose Trevino, and Will Banfield as the Reds catchers on the 40-man roster, which is now at 37 players.
Nick, this is intriguing. For those loyal listeners, you'll remember a couple weeks ago when Nick and I were talking about the offseason and moves that might happen and qualifying offers and all these different things. One of the things that we talked about was the catcher position. And we talked about, could the Reds look at extending Tyler Stephenson? Could the Reds look at trading Tyler Stephenson? What might the offseason look like for that? I brought up another topic, and I thought that the Reds could very easily replicate the production that they got from Jose Trevino for much cheaper and move off of Jose Trevino. Now, I look at this and Ben Rortvedt, to me, is very similar to Trevino in terms of what he brings to the team. Defensive first, good at pitch framing, which may or may not matter moving forward, but a subpar bat. And he's going to be doing it for much cheaper than the extension that the Reds gave Jose Trevino last offseason. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but this is a guy that doesn't have any options, Nick. What are the odds, first of all, that he's on the opening day roster? And if so, what's the corresponding move in your eyes to make that happen?
I think there's a lot of different ways this move could be done. If you wanted me to give you odds, I'd say, I don't know, 25% maybe would be kind of what I'm at. You can look at this a couple different ways. You can look at it as the Reds got this guy because they liked him, they liked his defense, and they said, hey, this is a guy that we think could be in a catching rotation. It could be to replace Tyler Stephenson, or it could be to replace Jose Trevino. I think you can make a plausible case for either one. Obviously, Tyler Stephenson, if you're trading him, you're expecting to get some pretty nice pieces back in return. But man, boy, that would be a brutal offensive duo. I know Jose Trevino hit out of his mind for the first 2 months of the season. He was really, really bad at the end of the season. I don't think he's either one of those, but he's not a good hitter. So for a team that already has a defensive first, third baseman, probably safe to say a defensive first, second baseman at this point, although I still have a lot of hope in Matt McLain. That would just be another position that it would be really, really hard to give up on this season. Jose Trevino, I know the Reds love him. That's why they signed that extension. But maybe this is a guy that they think is a guy that could replace him for a lot cheaper. And the Reds looking at their budget and saying, and we only have 15, 20 million. Like, we like Jose Trevino, but man, that's just not worth it for what we're doing. Or this could be an absolutely nothing burger, Craig. This could be just an opportunity where the Reds said, hey, this guy, we our scouting guys like him. We have an open spot on our 40-man roster. Let's just go ahead and pick him up right now. It's not going to hurt anything. We'll kind of see how the offseason goes. It gives us some flexibility. He could be off the 40-man roster in a couple of weeks, and I don't think it would be that insane. It could also be a situation where maybe the Reds are looking to pick him up, and then at the right strategic time, they'll try to option him to AAA and try to sneak him through because he's out of options. So I wouldn't – there's a lot of things this could mean. I wouldn't necessarily marry myself to any of them because I really honestly see plausible cases for either one. This guy was a World Series champion. Let's go throw that out there. But in being more serious, he was the Los Angeles Dodgers starting catcher for the entire month of September. Played over Dalton Rushing, their one of their top prospects. Played all 18 innings in that playoff series against the Cincinnati Reds, and then started games 1 and 2 against the Phillies before Will Smith returned. And really, with the Dodgers, he had the best stretch of his career. 224 average, 309 OPS, 636 OPS in 18 games with the Dodgers. That's not great numbers, but for a catcher that is a good defender, that's not terrible numbers either. And I don't know, we watched a lot of Dodgers games because they were playing the Diamondbacks and the Giants and teams the Reds were chasing at some point in September. I remember this guy made a lot of really big plays, had some big hits for them. And the fellow that you had me bring on for the podcast to preview the Dodgers, he really loved him too, as well. So again, I wouldn't go too far on this one way or the other. But hey, if you're just able to pick up a guy that has this good of a pedigree in terms of being a good defensive catcher, why not take a shot? We'll see how it all shakes out.
I think if nothing else, it gives you a little bit of depth going into spring training if he does in fact make it to spring training, as you mentioned. But if we're being completely honest, obviously you've got Tyler Stephenson and Jose Trevino, but beyond that, the Reds really don't have depth at the catching position that can step in and fill in. Obviously, we saw Will Banfield come in last year and play with the major league roster for a couple games, but it was very clear that Terry Francona didn't have a whole lot of trust in Will Banfield. Obviously, didn't feel comfortable putting him in there to catch Graham Ashcraft in a bullpen game, and then turned around and he had to make a couple starts and just not exactly a super high feeling in terms of the way Terry Francona treated that. Now that's a guy that obviously offensively feels like he has a higher ceiling than Rortvedt has. But the other thing is Ben Rortvedt's a left-handed bat, may or may not play into it. Michael Troutwine's a player that's been in the Red system now for a little while and hasn't had a chance to break into the major leagues. If I'm not mistaken, he's Rule 5 eligible. So probably not going to protect him at this point. But beyond that, I mean, Connor Burns, Cade Hunter, you've got Duno down in high A, Ryan McChrystal at high A, like nobody really ready to step in and fill in. So with Tyler Stephenson, potentially in the last year of his deal, who knows what's going to happen there. If nothing else, it gives you a little bit of depth and a little bit of safety net to play with just in case something does happen.
Yeah, it just more than anything gives you flexibility. So I don't know exactly how the Reds view him. I can make a case both ways, but either way, it's flexibility. It's a good thing. It gives the Reds more options, and the Reds need all the options they can get because it sounds like they're going to have a pretty creative offseason if they want to drastically improve this team.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Reds interested in a former Reds killer. Another player may be waiving his no trade clause. Plus, we've got the Arizona Fall League playoffs underway, all that and more. But first, I want to take a quick moment to acknowledge Chatterbox Reds sponsors.
Deep South Commodities is a proud supporter of Chatterbox Reds and our Deep Drive of the Day, and DSC is a leader in renewable commodities for biofuel production, specializing in used cooking oil collection, aggregation, and sales. Visit www.deepsouthcommodities.com for more information. Thanks as always to our friends at DSC. And we also want to remind you that you can call or text 988 anytime, day or night. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is a place to get support for anything related to mental health. Whether it's an immediate crisis, simply wanting to find out how to connect with care, or anything in between, it's a 100% confidential, secure, and anonymous way to reach out for help when you don't know where else to turn. To connect, call or text 988 or visit mantherapy.org to get help. It's okay not to be okay.
All right, Nick, reports on Wednesday that the Reds were interested in former Reds killer relief pitcher Devin Williams. Reds were one of 12 teams reportedly interested in the former Brewers closer. What do we know about that interest, and what do you make of them being included in that list of teams that are interested in Williams?
Yes. Yes. This is the kind of reliever you throw money to. You don't throw money to Emilio Pagan as much as we loved what Emilio Pagan did for us last year. But at best case scenario, if you sign Emilio Pagan, you're getting him on a fair deal. And small market teams can't pay veteran relievers on fair deals. It doesn't work. It doesn't add up. Devin Williams, he's going to cost more than I think you may think. It's not going to be a $2 million deal. But if you sign Devin Williams for a $10 million deal, it has an absolute chance to be a steal. An absolute steal. This guy had a 2.68 FIP last year. I can't even believe that he would be. I think that's why there's 12 teams interested in him. I mean, the peripheral numbers are there. To me, he's got the Sonny Gray vibes of he goes to New York, doesn't work, get him out of New York, and it's great. I don't think the Reds could go too crazy on this, but for the Reds, they need to make some risky moves. You're not just going to go sign a bunch of Austin Hayeses and drastically improve the team. And I know everyone wants offense. I want offense. Your cousin wants offense. Offense is great. But good players are good players. And you can win ugly. The Cleveland Guardians made the playoffs too, won more games than the Reds, and they were a worse offense than the Cincinnati Reds. But you know what they had? They had an elite bullpen. And Devin Williams would have the chance to completely transform your bullpen. I mean, he, in my opinion, would be the equivalent of going out and getting 4 Scott Barlows. I mean, in terms of the overall value, if he's anything close to what he's been over his entire career, and the peripheral numbers say that he would be there. So I 1,000%, and I'll say this before I shut up. You tell me I can sign Austin Hayes for $10 million or Devin Williams for $10 million. It's not even a conversation. I'll run my chances with Will Benson and a Reese Hines platoon because you know what? Hey, there's upside there, and there's a lot of upside with Devin Williams. Now, if it's stopping me from signing Kyle Schwarber, no, I'm not going to do that. But we're probably not going there. So, yeah, I'm all about Devin Williams. I would love for the Reds to make that as a splashy move, and I would love to defend it as people throw pitchforks at me.
Well, first of all, I'm not going to throw pitchforks at you to want Devin Williams. I'm on board 100% that if the price is right, Devin Williams is the exact kind of signing that I'd love this team to make. The challenge that I see, Nick, and this is, again, similar conversations that we've had over the last several weeks, is that, initial reports were that the Reds 2026 payroll was going to be similar to this past year's. A lot of people did some math in terms of what that meant in terms of what they had left to spend. But then recent reports out of the GM meetings now have it that the Reds have somewhere between $15 and $20 million to spend this offseason. That's not a lot of money, first of all. We're talking about potentially putting a big chunk of that into Devin Williams, which I'm all for, if that's whether that number is accurate or not, to be honest with you. But here's where I trip up a little bit, and I'll give you some projected contracts for Devin Williams. And there's a couple of different articles that have dove into Williams's offseason and what it could look like. We'll start with The Athletic and Tim Britton. He thinks that Williams is going to look for a shorter-term deal, try to reset his market, have a better year, and then come back as a free agent after 2026. He thinks that's going to be somewhere in the range of 1 year, $18 million. Now, the Detroit Free Press, they've suggested a 3-year, $40 million deal, which would be about a $10 million raise over his previous contracts. ESPN's Kylie McDaniel predicted a 3-year, $45 million contract. He talked about his strong pass performances, his peripherals, as you mentioned, despite the difficult 2025. And then MLB Trade Rumors, who I know you respect a lot in terms of the projections that they put out, they have him getting a 4-year, $68 million contract this offseason. I'm all for Devin Williams. I want to start with that conversation, but I'm also all for Kyle Schwarber. And guess what? I also think there's zero chance of the Reds signing Kyle Schwarber. So file this one into the, yeah, of course they're interested. There's a lot of things that we're all interested in that probably still aren't going to happen. So yes, would the Reds make a big splash by making that signing? Yes. Would I be all in on that signing? Yes. Is it likely to happen? Not so sure.
Yeah, the one thing that'd be interesting would be like opt-outs. So if you were able,
100%.
if you sign him on like it'd be a gamble, but if you sign him on a 4-year, $40 million deal, let's say that, or 3-year, $40 million, whatever, that it's probably going to be a 1-year, and maybe you could even sign him to that, but take the gamble where that first year is not as much. And if he opts out, you know what I mean? So you gave him some guaranteed money, but you're able to sell the Reds ownership on, look, he's going to opt out next year of this deal. And we're going to get a draft pick back for him because he's going to get a qualifying offer as well. That would be, I think, the biggest selling point and why it could make sense for the Reds. And I mean, just in terms of like a bold move, that would be the kind of bold move. And we talked, Mike brought up a great point with deferred money. If there's ever a time for deferred money, this would be now, if that's exactly where the Reds are at. I mean, if you don't try to improve this team and you don't keep a loaded farm system, which it sounds like if the Reds tried to, Craig, if the Reds try to go all in with trades, they're not going to have a loaded farm system. At some point, you're going to be rebuilding again. And like, you're not going to be spending money then. So like, defer some money and make up for it later down the road. I've been thinking about this a lot. And I've been someone, Craig, that has kind of defended the Reds ownership and their spending. I've never like thrown a parade for them and never been like, oh my God, these guys are incredible. I love them. They're so great. But I also like look at like the other small market teams and like, oh, the Reds are doing probably better than a lot of them. Having said that, like, my God, this is the time. This is the time to just try a little bit harder. And the Reds have to also, in my opinion, they need to pick a lane. Either they are going to spend the extra money or defer the money, however they do it this offseason. They either need to do that or they need to start acting like a cheap team. And they need to do what the Milwaukee Brewers do. They trade Corbin Burns. They trade Devin Williams. They trade Josh Hader. They trade all these guys when they're winning. The Reds never do it when they're winning. The only time the Reds will do it is when it's obvious, when it's 2022 and you have to trade Luis Castillo and Tyler Mahle because you're nowhere close. Either be dirt cheap, don't be trading for Gavin Luxes and giving up prospects, and just keep stockpiling it, and you're going to make everyone mad, but everyone's mad anyways. So what does it matter at this point? Either be a dirt cheap team that is cutthroat with trading players and not worried about this year's window, because if you're not going to spend on this year's window, it doesn't matter. You need to be thinking fully big picture. They need to be fully big picture or more in on the short picture. And right now they're kind of stuck in the middle, the Gavin Lux land.
Yeah, I get that. I guess the question to that point turns to the conversation around Hunter Green and whether or not he's on the table. Obviously, some reports out of the GM meetings today from Nick Krall stating, quote, "That's not on the table." So it's interesting to your point. Like, we had Mark Sheldon was on the Stone Shield show yesterday and talking about Hunter Green and other Reds news and potential offseason looks. And then, of course, a couple hours later, Nick Krall comes out and says, look, we're going to do what's best for our team. I don't want to rule anything out. But that's a hard one to actually say, hey, we're going to trade the guy who has a chance to be the ace of our staff and a top of the rotation guy going into the postseason. So I say that we're looking to figure out how to get better, but right now that's not on the table. So, to your point, like, you either need to make the moves that truly set you up long-term, which is to trade your stars at times, or you need to spend some money and invest to put some people around those stars, because just having Hunter Green on this team is not going to be enough. And just having Hunter Green and Ellie De La Cruz is not going to be enough. And they're going to need to do something. And one way or another, that's got to happen. But right now, it doesn't sound like that's on the table for the Reds this offseason, at least. Speaking of trades, Nick, obviously Hunter Green sounds like not on the table. We're bringing this up for a very specific reason, obviously, but a name that a lot of Reds fans have had their eye on for years, especially in the Chatterbox community, one that has not really been on the table for years, but reports on Wednesday that Byron Buxton of the Minnesota Twins may be open to waiving his no trade clause if the Twins continue down this path of tearing down their roster. Look, he's got 3 years, $45 million remaining on his deal. That is definitely a contract that makes a ton of sense for Byron Buxton. And if the Reds can make that happen, certainly fills a need. Your thoughts on Byron Buxton and whether or not he gets moved this offseason, and if so, what it might take to actually get him in a Cincinnati Reds uniform?
He'd be a really hard player to gauge what he would actually cost, just because of his long injury history. And when you said a Reds killer, at first I thought you were talking about Byron Buxton, because I think he hit a home run every game he's ever played against the Reds. So both of these guys are Reds killers. But yeah, I mean, he would just absolutely fill a need. I mean, and 3 years, $45 million. I mean, that's a dream contract for the Reds. But I would think that the Twins are looking for the moon for him. And when you're a team like the Twins and you're kind of have your, a lot of work ahead of you, and a guy that's not making a ton of money, I don't think you're going to trade him right now if you're not getting a great return. If you're not getting a game-changing return, keep until the trade deadline, and maybe you can get a team more desperate then. That would be more willing to go out. But maybe Buxton will say, look, I'll waive it right now, but I won't waive it at the deadline. And maybe there is a little bit more leverage on Buxton's side. We don't know that. But yeah, it would absolutely make sense. I don't think I would be okay with giving up Burns or Duno. I think that's probably where the Twins would start. I'd be willing to give up a pretty big prospect package, But I think those two would be the two that would be really, really hard for me to want to part with.
Yeah, the Twins did reportedly turn down a deal for Buxton at the trade deadline this past season. But reports now that he wants to play for a winner and may reconsider his stance on certain clubs if the Twins continue breaking up their roster. The key obviously being there that he wants to play for a winner. And I think trading for him would be certainly an indication that maybe the Reds are actually looking to become a winner. And that's the kind of move that certainly would fit that bill. Former number 2 overall draft pick and has a full no trade clause. So definitely see what happens there, but certainly would fill that need and would be interesting. But given the injury history and everything else, not sure the Reds would pull the trigger on that, but certainly one to keep your eye on as a fit that if the Reds do decide to make some moves, that would make sense. Speaking of prospects, Nick, obviously some prospects would have to be on the table for Byron Buxton, some top prospects, and the Reds, the Arizona Fall League, officially into postseason mode now, had their quarterfinal game on Wednesday night. How did it go for the Peoria Javelinas?
Well, good. How about a big comeback? They trailed 7-4 in the 7th inning, but they came back to win 8-7. Peoria moves on to the semifinal game. That is tonight if you're listening on Thursday, 8:30 p.m. MLB.com. And then the championship game, if they win, would be Friday at 3:30 p.m. on MLB.com. The Friday game will be re-aired on Saturday on MLB Network. They were supposed to play that game this weekend, but there was some weather and they had to move it up. So I guess MLB Network could not move their programming at 3:30 on Friday.
There's a lot going on Fridays on
but
MLB Network.
At least I think the Friday, if they advance, would be like an actual broadcast and not the cell phone broadcast that they've been providing us with. But even if it's on MLB.com, I think it would be a quality broadcast. But nonetheless, some really good stuff. How about Alfredo Duno, a 445-foot home run, 113 off the bat on Wednesday night. He, struggled outside of, he drew a ton of walks, but really wasn't able to get any hits or anything early. But over his last 3 games, 4 for 9, a homer, a triple, and a double. 19 years old. This is just great experience for Duno. A guy that, man, I'm really, really excited about. I mean, you got to be patient with catchers. You got to be very, 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 very patient with catchers. It took Tyler Stephenson a long time to get to the big leagues, but I think that paid off. I know Stephenson's been kind of a lightning rod, but I think overall you have to be pleased with what you've gotten out of Stephenson so far in his career. Also, Craig,
don't forget, Duno hasn't turned 20 yet, so
yeah, still 19 years old. Yep. Also, a Reds number 23 ranked prospect Leo Balcazar actually drove in the go-ahead run in the 8th inning. He's had a great Arizona Fall League. That's been great to see. We'll see if the Reds add him to the roster to protect him from the Rule 5 come-up. And Trevor Kuntzel, the local kid, he had a run in an inning of a third, but he hit 98.1 miles per hour. I think he has 17 strikeouts in like 8 innings in the Arizona Fall League. He's been incredible. A guy that I mean, he's hitting 98.1 miles per hour, and this guy's been pitching all year. This is still, he was on the opening day roster, I believe, for Chattanooga. But definitely a guy that keep your eye on. I think he can make the bullpen in 2020, in 2026 for the Reds if things go his way.
Yeah, he pitched in 47 minor league games this year, and obviously continued that into Arizona. So he's pitching a lot. He has some well-deserved time off coming up here after the finals. Well, hopefully the Javelinas make it to the finals, but some well-deserved time off here coming up for Kuntzel. Speaking of coming up, the general managers meetings are currently underway. Today is the final day of those meetings in Las Vegas. Rule 5 protection deadline coming up on the 18th of November, then the non-tender deadline on the 21st, and then the MLB winter meetings where we really start to see the hot stove heat up. Those take place December 7th through the 10th with the Rule 5 draft happening there on the 10th. International signing period ends on December 15th, so if the Reds are making any moves, it needs to happen by that period. Any final thoughts, Nick, before we say goodbye for this time?
No, be sure to check out Stone did a really good interview. Stone Shields, our guy that does the show every day, 11 a.m. on Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Really great interview with Mark Sheldon, some really good insight. That's available on our YouTube page. And then I also have posted that by the time you're listening to this into the Chatterbox Reds podcast feed. So you can listen to it there as well. But yeah, be sure to check that out. Really good insight with Mark Sheldon from Stone Shield. And then all kinds of other content here. We got content flying left and right. There's a brand new episode of Chatterbox Bearcats that dropped on Thursday morning. They're previewing the Arizona football game and the recap of the basketball win over Dayton. FC Cincinnati Flying Line has a new podcast coming out previewing their playoff matchup this weekend. All kinds of content. If you're listening to podcast form, links to all that's in the episode notes below. If you're on YouTube, just start clicking around. You'll find something you like.
Yeah, it's an exciting time with FC Cincinnati. Messi and the Miami FC coming to town for the next round of the playoffs. So opportunity to see one of the best in the world take on your FC Cincinnati, and the Flying Lion podcast has you covered for all of the Messi coverage. Look, exciting times. Hot stove is heating up, as I said 100 times already. Nick and I will be here along with Mike Hart and others with any breaking news as always. So if you haven't already, make sure you like this video, please. We really do appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all the social media channels as well at CBox Sports. Until next time, for Nick Kirby, I'm Craig Sandlin. This has been Chatterbox Reds. We appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time.